Getting to Sandhurst is a huge achievement, but it is just the very start. 44 weeks of constant assessments, relentless pressure and steep learning curves can really take its toll. But there's one part that stands above all the rest in terms of difficulty. One phase that breaks more people than any other. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why the first 5 weeks are referred to as the shock of capture, why they're hard and where people go wrong. Let's get into it. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Seeming as the last video on Sandhurst did really well and there was a load of questions from it, I wanted to do another one specifically about one of the most challenging points in Sandhurst. You get there fresh from AOSB, you've done all your pre-joining requirements and you turn up at Sandhurst. You are very much a civilian, okay? That is why the first 5 weeks are renownedly difficult. It's super fast paced, and in this video I'm going to break down why it's called the shock of capture, just what you're trying to achieve in those first 5 weeks, the biggest challenge, and then finally where people tend to go wrong and the tips to avoid it. So this is all what we're going to cover today. Let's start. Okay, point number one, what on earth is the shock of capture? Simply put, this is what us as DS deem to be the transition from being a civilian to a soldier. We are kind of breaking you down and molding you how we want you. Teamwork is at the very heart of it. So we need you to stop thinking of just being an individual all the time. That comes later in the course at Sandhurst. The first 5 weeks is all about just trying to make sure that you can work as a cohesive unit. It is not easy to take a bunch of random civilians that don't know each other and get them working as a team as fast as possible. It is actually quite a big challenge. So you go through a lot of different experiences in a very short amount of time in order for us to achieve that. Now, what this shock of capture refers to is the fact that everything is new to you, everything is different. You walk through the gates, you wave bye to mum and dad, you take your ironing board to your room, and all of a sudden you are in the army's control, you are in Sandhurst, and pretty much your thinking for these first 5 weeks is kind of taken away from you. You are just expected to be with the right kit in the right place at the right time, which actually is more challenging than it sounds. When we talk about the shock of capture, we know as people that have been in the military, and I'm sure you have heard about it as well, just how challenging that process can be. And if you go to basic training, it's 4 weeks, at Sandhurst it's 5 weeks, and it's just jam-packed of activity and everything feels a little bit strange because it's just a completely new experience. You'll do a lot of work in this time, but we refer to it as the shock of capture because we know you're going to find it hard. We know you're going to find it challenging. As I said, everything's new, but also you're under pressure, you're nervous because you still don't understand how the army works and who these people around camp are and all that type of stuff. So we are very aware that you go from probably living a life where you are quite comfortable most of the time and you understand all your surroundings and all that type of stuff, to suddenly going to a completely different environment that is extremely regimented, very discipline orientated, and you could get shouted at for stuff that you don't even know you've done, right? So that we know it's difficult, that's why we give it this term, and you're not actually allowed to leave in this phase because the army knows that this isn't replicable of what real life is like. Once you are trained and once you sort of complete this initial training phase, life starts to relax a little bit and you settle into the rhythm of not just being at Sandhurst but also in the army. It isn't like this all the time. I've touched on it in another video when I think it's a really big point. I used to have recruits come to me when I was a DS at Catterick and they wanted to leave in the first 4 weeks because it was completely different and they thought they knew what the army was and the reality is they didn't. And the same at Sandhurst, but just amplified. One, because it lasts longer, and two, because more is expected of you. Which brings me on to my next point, which is essentially basic training. This is where the first 5 weeks are similar to the first 12 weeks of if you joined as a soldier. So they're condensing 12 weeks of basic training and trying to fit it into 5 weeks at Sandhurst. Now, after being a DS at Catterick, I can say that this isn't wholly true, but the saying goes that in the first 5 weeks, you basically complete what being a soldier is like. That's kind of the standard that they want to get you at in those first 5 weeks. If you were to join as a soldier, that is a 12-week phase. Your phase 1 training is 12 weeks. If you go to Sandhurst, they try and condense that 12-week period into 5 weeks. So you can start to understand why people are so tired towards the end of that first 5 weeks, because you are constantly learning and it's extremely fast paced. Some of it's just about kit and equipment and stuff, some of it's slightly more intellectual and challenging, but there is little time for yourself. Again, going back to why it's a shock, because there's just such little time to yourself and you're always expected to do things. When we look at what's required from a soldier, it's really important for officer cadets to get to that standard quickly, so then you can start to understand what comes after that. Now, as I said, I was a DS at Catterick, and it's not actually like that. You don't do everything that a soldier would do in 12 weeks condensed into 5, because it's just not possible. But you definitely do a lot of it, and you will race through those first 5 weeks. So that's probably this key second point, is to understand what they're trying you to achieve. They're throwing all of this new stuff at you. You're expected to learn it quickly so that you can then progress onto the other parts of the commissioning course. You can't learn to be an officer if you don't know how to be a soldier yet. Doesn't mean that you have to be a super soldier, but it's just impossible. So you have to learn the basics of being a soldier before you can understand how to command them. And the same goes in the field. We're not just talking about in camp here. In the field, what are the roles and responsibilities of a private, of a lance corporal, a corporal, a sergeant, and a platoon commander? Like, what are those jobs to do in the field? All of that is stuff that they want you to understand quickly, so then we can progress into the more challenging part of understanding how to be an officer as well. So that's point number 2. That brings me on to point number 3, which is going to be the day-to-day. What do you actually do? What do you spend your time doing? I'm going to break this down. The first part is going to be kit inspections, making sure that you understand how to do the more boring stuff like iron your kit, polish your boots, order your room. I mean, trust me, the stuff they have you doing to get your room ready for a room inspection, some of it is absolutely insane, right? They want you to measure a certain distance between a spoon and a fork that they give you. They want your socks rolled up into smiley faces, and they want, you know, also the drawers are massive and they want a total of like 5 things in there. It doesn't make any sense, right? They want hospital corners on your bed. They want everything like no dust at all. And they want every single room, every 30 rooms, to be exactly the same. That is, if you've got something hanging on this wardrobe, then that needs to be replicated across the entire dorm. There's a lot, right? Now, on the face of it, we can understand why it's important to iron your kit and stuff, but why are they drilling down so much on that area when it's like the spacings in between, and, you know, how do you have a hospital corner on your bed? The reason is discipline and to get you working as a team. I've shared this story before. I got ready for a room inspection. I thought it was in good order. Someone came in, said I did all right, and then basically just trashed the room. Now, whilst that's frustrating, the point behind there, at least what I think the point behind there is that then everyone else helps me get my room ready. All right, we're reinforcing teamwork. No one goes to bed until everyone's sorted. That kind of ethos, if you can get that right in camp, and this goes for all soldiering, if you can get it right in camp, you've got a better chance of getting it right in the field. If your admin is all over the place in camp, you haven't got a hope in hell of being able to do it in the field. You just haven't, right? So being able to get that stuff done is really important. The second part, which you'll spend a lot of time doing, it will start off in the classroom and it will progress to where you're doing it in the field and on exercise, but is navigation. Cue all of the soldiers, all of the veterans that have watched this saying, officers can't navigate, blah, blah, blah. Well, definitely not at this point. It's hard. Learning to navigate is pretty hard, especially if you've never actually used a proper mapping compass before. And you have to learn it pretty quick. It starts in the classroom, and very, very quickly you start to go out, and very, very quickly you start to get assessed on it. And I remember suddenly, within those first 5 weeks, suddenly walking around at night being asked to read this mapping compass and find out where I was, right? It is very different to what I was used to, which would have just been Apple Maps. So learning how to navigate is going to be a huge part of it, because that is a very important responsibility as an officer. So yeah, a lot of your time is going to be navigation. Okay guys, that is it for this week's video. I wanted to do something about Sandhurst because there was a load of comments on the last video, not just on YouTube, but I got it on all of my socials, about what's life like. I've heard about the first 5 weeks, so I thought what better way of just putting it in this video. I really want to make the point again is like, I really enjoyed my time at Sandhurst. I had an awesome experience. It developed me into a good, competent leader that I could then build on throughout my career. And I made some awesome friends and had some unreal experiences, right? I remember specific occasions going and meeting my friends from home for a beer in between the terms, and they were telling me about their new job. And then I was telling them that just a couple of nights previous, I'd been using night vision systems and, you know, going over some hills into an attack with smoke. Like, it was so cool as an experience. However, it is challenging, and those first 5 weeks are difficult, and I doubted myself a lot in those first 5 weeks. So I'm putting this together to give you the information so that you can prepare as best as you can, and also when it inevitably does get hard, you understand why and the fact that you can come out the other side. That is my ultimate aim with this video. If it's been useful, please like, it really helps me out. Also subscribe, click the bell so you can be notified every time I upload a video, and I will see you next week with a brand new video.